We're going to talk about pages 11 through 12 on page 1035. Basically just giving you a bird's eye view about sine and cosine graphs. So on both pages, 11 and 12, they give you some points that you can graph, and then if you were to connect the dots, you would end up with, first of all, this graph, which, if you remember from physical science, this is called a wave. And so we have some of the same terminology. The highest point on a wave is called the trough, and is it called the peak? No, I'm forgetting. So the highest point, but in trigonometry, we just call the highest point the maximum, okay? So that's easy to remember, and the lowest point is called a minimum. So instead of a trough, it's a minimum. Again, that's easy to remember. And if we do, starting at 0, it's the points, as you see when you graph them, go up, they hit a maximum, they go back down, they pass through the axis here of 0, and then they go into the negative numbers, and they come back up. And actually, these kind of represent on our unit circle. And then it would continue. So we have coterminal angles. So if we had angles further out here, they would actually have the same values as these back here. So this pattern will just continue. And so a lot of times that is just called the sine curve. It's a very familiar shape. And sometimes it's just called, even though, like down here, we're going to talk about the cosine curve. It's exactly the same shape as the sine curve. It just starts at a different point. Okay, so that shape has a name, the sine curve. Now, because one complete circle is 360 degrees, that's the same as 2 pi, right? Going all the way around the circle would be 2 pi, so halfway is the pi. If we were to try to find the maximum here, do you know what that would have to be at? That would be halfway between here and here. So that would be pi over 2. Okay, and then this would be 3 pi over 2. I mean right here, sorry. 3 pi over 2 would represent that point right there. Now another term that you might remember from physical science is the height here from this midpoint line to the height and to the depth, okay, to the maximum and to the minimum. That distance is called the amplitude. So for this particular graph, it's going to be the same all the way. It's not going to change. The amplitude will stay the same. All right, let's talk now about the cosine of x. Page 12, they plug in several points for the different values along the x-axis, figure out what is the y-axis, and then graph the points. Notice the shape is still the same, but the big difference is a cosine graph at 0 starts at its maximum, whereas the sine graph is crossing the axis on its way up right here at the 0. Okay, so it's crossing on the way up, reaches the maximum, reaches the minimum. The cosine maximum is on the axis, the y-axis. It's going to go through the midline and then drop the same distance below this line. So the amplitude from here to here is the same as from here to here. Okay? And then it'll come back and reach its maximum here again. So this would be one complete wavelength. Again, it's a circle, 2 pi. The other thing we did not talk about on the sine, and I want to point out for both the sine and the cosine, is that the values on the y-axis will be 1, and this will come across right here at -1. Same here, this is crossing at +1. The minimum will be here at -1. Okay, so the amplitude in standard form is just 1. All right, I think those are the main things I wanted to point out. You'll see a picture of that on the bottom of page 12, kind of summarizing that. I'm going to stop now and we'll do another video about page 13 and 14, which will introduce the graphing calculator.